We can start? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Buongiorno. This is the workshop. So if you, like on the airplane, this is the Europython workshop for Python on the cloud with Platform as a Service. If this is not where you are expecting to be sitting, please exit the plane and go to a different workshop. All the talk is up live right now on the web. If you go to talks.thesteve0, that's a 0.com, and then under workshops, you'll see my talk right there. Okay, so if you want to follow along, this is just a revealed JS slide deck, so you can also bookmark it. It'll be permanent for at least the next, I would assume, next year. This will be up. This is me. You can just call me Steve, though. This is me on Twitter, IRC, and GitHub, and if you need to email me, it's my SPOUSTY at, replace that with redhat.com. I just didn't feel like, since this is up on the web, I didn't feel like giving all spammers my email address, my work address especially. All right? And again, put a WK on the end of this when you sign up, but we'll do that. I'm assuming everyone who is here already will be fine. We'll do it in a little bit. All right, any other questions before we get started? I'm expecting everyone to have a laptop. So it's all going to be hand-on. So the agenda is learn a little bit about Platform as a Service, a little bit about Openshift, and then get an app and MongoDB running in the cloud with Flask. So we're going to use Flask today because I find that the easiest to get started with. Django has a lot more moving pieces. Assumptions. You like writing code, managing them servers, rather than managing servers. Is that true? For almost all of you? Yeah? Okay. And you can use the command line git and SSH. Is that true? Yeah? Good? If not, the amount of git and SSH we're going to be using is piccolo. So most people will probably be able to pick it up anyway.
What is the difference? What is git? I know SSH and the command line, but what is git?
Have you used Subversion? Have you used SVN? Subversion? CVS?
CVS, yes.
It's like 1,000 times better. So you'll be if nothing, you'll be very excited that you've done this in class today, because if you don't learn anything about cloud or anything else, you've learned a much better source control system. Okay, so that's it for the introduction and agenda. Now we're going to get into Platform as a Service. This slide is not propaganda. Okay, this one is more about teaching you guys about cloud. So there's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, right? So what's an example of infrastructure as a service? Okay, I got to sweeten the pot. Hold on. I promise you that OpenStack, there we go. So I have 4 gig, how many do I have? Do I have enough for everybody? I think I have enough for everybody, but I'm not giving everyone. He's going to get it first because he actually talked. What? Because you woke up just in time, exactly. So yeah, and infrastructure as a service, the most famous one is Amazon EC2, right? So with infrastructure as a service, you ask for infrastructure and they give it to you as a service. You still have to pick the operating system, you still have to configure it, you still have to keep it up to date, you still have to configure all the servers, you have to do the DNS, you have to do all that work, right? So it's great because you haven't bought any physical machines, you didn't have to rack it and stack it, you got a machine basically within 2 minutes, right? And it's set to go, which is awesome and has changed the way we do computing. But for developers, there's still a bunch of work left to do. Software as a service. What's the biggest software as a service out there today? What?
Google Apps.
Yes, Google Apps or Google Mail, specifically. Like everybody has about 7 Gmail accounts. So if you take the number of people in the world and you multiply by 7, that's a lot of people using Gmail, right?
I can use PC as well.
Yes, you do. You're right. You are the second person to get a USB. Now I'm going to throw this one. Get ready. Okay, so, but how fun is software as a service for developers? Not very fun, right? With it's great that I don't have to set up my own mail servers and run them and do all the MX records and all that stuff, but I can't really program against Gmail. I can't write an application and host it on Gmail. So what Platform as a Service is in between this level and this level. And so the idea with this is, what a developer does is they give one command and they'll spin up the entire development environment for them. So what you'll see today is we're going to use Platform as a Service to spin up Apache, mod WSGI, put a Git repository on it, and then we can just git push and it'll build and deploy our code. Right? There's no, and the underlying OS will already be configured, permissions will be configured, DNS will be configured, and it'll all be kept up to date without us having to touch anything. Right? Which is what I, as a developer, really want to do. Has anybody heard of the idea of yak shaving? Have you heard of yak shaving? Do you know what a yak is? A yak is the big buffaloes that live up in Tibet, right, with the big horns and they have the long fur. So it comes from this idea that it's in the middle of winter and you live in the Czech Republic because you work for Red Hat, right? And you want to go check your mail, your physical mail, that thing that still sometimes comes, to the mailbox that you have. Usually it's only bills, but you still want to check it anyway. And it's freezing outside. And so you're like, oh, I got to go put on a sweater. Ah, I don't have a sweater. All right, well, I've got to knit a sweater. Okay, to knit a sweater, I need some yarn. Okay, I don't have any yarn. I'm going to have to spin some yarn. Okay, I need some wool to spin a yarn. I don't have any wool. Okay, so I'm going to go outside and start shaving my yak. And you spend the whole day, and you shave half the yak, and you still haven't gotten to your mail yet, right? And that's yak shaving. And so that's the exact same thing that most developers face when they use something like EC2, right? They've said, I really want to write this cool application in Python. I want to get it going. I'm so excited. And then you spin up an instance, and then you're configuring software for the next 3 days, and you do half of it wrong, and then you're going back and doing it again. And so at the end of 3 days, you haven't written a line of code, but you spent a lot of brain energy wasted on trying to get servers configured. Right? And so Platform as a Service solves the yak shaving problem for developers. So I said this wasn't propaganda. Of course, Openshift is a Platform as a Service. What are other ones? Heroku. Yeah, what's another one? AppFog, yes. Although they were just bought by Savvis, so I don't know what's happening with them, but yeah. I don't know Cloud Control. Yes, that's another one. Who's, Staccato is another one here, right? These are all Platforms as a Service. And why am I telling you about them? Because I think Platform as a Service will be the way that most developers will be delivering apps within the next 2 to 3 years. At least some part of their development work will be using Platform as a Service. Even at your company, right? This is not just for cool startup hipsters. Like think of who Red Hat's customers are, because we have an installable version of this. Those companies are asking us to stand up OpenShift for them. Like PayPal, right? PayPal internally has adopted OpenShift as their Platform as a Service. Accenture is using, they found internal to an enterprise, developers were 30 to 40% more productive when they had a Platform as a Service available. So all developers should learn Platform as a Service. You should play with, and the reason I'm telling you other ones is I'm secure enough in my Platform as a Service that I think you should use ours, but then use others just so that you get a sense of what they're like. The other thing you should be learning is Git, right? I think Subversion is basically done. It'll be used in small use cases here and there, but in general, I think everybody's moving to Git. And the other one is some sort of NoSQL database. I don't think relational databases are going away, but I do think people will start using NoSQL databases here and there in most of their applications. So today we're going to use some Mongo as well. Right? So today I give you 3 things that everybody needs to know. Exactly, thank you. I'm glad I gave you a USB stick. If I had something better, I'd give you even something better now. I just want to do a quick overview of OpenShift. This is OpenShift Origin, which was just open sourced from the beginning. We had an open source product because we're Red Hat. It's Apache licensed. It's now in Fedora 19 as well, so if you install Fedora 19, all the bits are in Fedora. It is the upstream project to both OpenShift Online, which is what all of us will be using today. Did they fix the network? I saw a bunch of red shirts. Okay, so the other thing is everybody should try to jack in and use the network, the hard line at some point. Because that's the thing about the cloud. When you have the internet, it's great. When you don't have the internet, not so good. This is what we'll be using today, and you can pay and use this. There's also a free tier, and I'm not going to talk too much about pricing because that's kind of boring. But I can if you want me to, but it's just boring. OpenShift Enterprise is where you can take It's like Red Hat Enterprise Linux, right? Fedora, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You can take the bits and install them anywhere you want and run a platform for your services yourself. No network still. Well, but you're using Debian, so who knows? It's not working there too. Okay, all right. It's still not working. Can you put a call in again? Has anybody got it working? No. For one person. That's because he uses VI. All right. All right. So that's the products. Any questions? This is quick. I'm trying to get through the slides as fast as possible to get to code. This is what you get with Openshift. So everything except for, this is online, Amazon Web Services. This is replaced in Origin. This is Fedora instead of RHEL. Can you see everything? But except for everything from here up is standard across all products, right? So we host on Amazon. Everything's running on RHEL or Fedora because of SE Linux and C groups and the stuff we do with that. That's actually how we do our virtualization. Out of the box, you get Tomcat, Apache, JBoss, and if any of you PHP developers or work in a PHP shop, any? No? All right. Zen, you can have Zen server if you want, which is kind of like JBoss for PHP developers. Data stores and backends, PostgreSQL, MySQL, and Mongo. How many of you use Postgres? And you didn't go to the workshop next door? I'm touched. MySQL, and then Mongo, a couple? Okay. Custom cartridges, you can run anything you want, any binary you want to run that runs on RHEL or Fedora, you can use with Openshift. So I wrote a blog post about how to host Minecraft servers on Openshift, because it's just a jar file and it just runs. But for more productive use cases, people have run Play or Couchbase or Memcache, anything you want. Languages that we support out of the box, surprise, surprise, Python. Java, PHP, Node, Ruby, and Perl. Anybody still do Perl web development? Not in this room, right? Yeah. You do? That was 3 USB sticks right there. Because you're proud enough to say it. Usually the...
That's the only language that looks the same before and after the gzip.
Nicely done. For those on the video who didn't hear why everyone laughed, he said that's the only... Perl is the only language that looks the same before and after the gzip. Yeah.
With respect to database systems, all the non-open source systems like Oracle, DB2, SQL Server are out of, they are not
Included?
in this war.
So the question was, I should repeat the questions for the video, right? Right. The question is, what about non-open source databases? Are they out of this world? They're not out of this world. I am out of this world. The idea with this is what you get with hosted out of the box, right? We have customers now who are taking DB2 and making DB2 cartridges for this, but it's in our enterprise product, right? Usually those people are some large shop and they have it internally. SQL Server, unlikely to ever run in any of our products because it runs on Windows only, right? And we're running on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. What we find in most enterprise cases, though, is that they're not going to allow their developers to use the database that comes out of the box anyway. They have some large Oracle test instance, and what they do is they write a little tiny cartridge. Cartridge is what adds functionality.
And what with Oracle?
Oracle, you could run it on here if you want, but most people don't want their developers spinning up Oracle on their own. What they'll do is they'll have a cluster of Oracle machines with a developer instance, and they'll have their application hitting that specific Oracle instance. You could, but it doesn't always, but you don't have, most people are not doing that. There's no problem with writing an Oracle cartridge though. As long as you would probably use the personal edition for the developers here. Oracle's a pretty big beast, so spinning that up automatically is not such a good idea. Right. Okay. Because we're standard open source packages, almost all the normal things work, like Flask and Django for Python developers, or Pyramids, they all work straight out of the box. Any of you use Eclipse? Yeah, so we have great Eclipse integration. It's a free plugin. It's called JBoss Developer Tools. You just install, even though it says it's JBoss, the developer tools do great integration with OpenShift. We have Jenkins. How many of you are doing continuous integration or test-driven development? So you get Jenkins right out of the box, and then we have packaged apps. So you can start up a WordPress site with one mouse click. Any questions on this? Any other questions? Good? All right. So I think this is awesome sauce, right? Because I get all of this stuff out of the box without having to configure anything. There's no configuration done by the developer. And the nice part for sysadmins is they know everything's getting spun up in a standard way and it's running in a nice way. They can, on enterprise, they can control it. Even in online, everybody's spinning it up in the same way. So it's easy and it's locked down. I'll show you why it's locked down. Okay, last propaganda slide. But wait, there's more. It's free with no time limit. So you guys have all signed up for the free tier by signing up for an account. That means you get what we call gears, and you get 3 of those. So you get 3 gears. You can think of those like servers. Each is 512 megs of RAM and 1 gigabyte of disk space, and those are free forever. Free except for the fact that, you know, if Red Hat goes out of business or something like that, then they're not, yeah, exactly. We won't provide the service anymore. But other than that, they're free forever. No transaction limits, no bandwidth limits in terms of that, right? This is basically, we give you a pipe and you get to use as much of that pipe as you want. So as long as your application can run in that amount of resources, and this 512 megs of RAM is not for the operating system plus your application servers. This is the RAM that's just for your application server, right? Or for your database. So it's only applications that run under your user ID, not applications that are normal background stuff. If you can run in that level of resources, it's free forever. So if you can get someone to pay you 1,000 euros to look at your web page, and you get 500 of those a week, or 500 of those a day, you get to make all that money, and you don't have to pay us anything. Just saying. Okay? We don't care. It's auto-scaling. I'm not going to show this today, but we have the ability to say, we'll watch for HTTP connections. When they start to pile up, we'll spin up another server for you, sync your code over, plug it into the load balancer, and automatically start putting connections into that, and keep doing that until the load is matched, or until you've said, I've only want this many servers. And then when their load dies down, we'll spin it back down for you. And you know, there's no beeper getting notifying you, no manual intervention by you. And simple pricing. So the only thing we price on is RAM and disk. There's no pricing on anything else. One of the things we tried to avoid is the whole, well, it's this much for the machine, but then you pay this much for transactions and this much for bandwidth and this, so you can kind of have some stability in your pricing. Because I, as a developer, have no idea in terms of how many transactions are going to happen and how much bandwidth is going to get used. Or if I'm afraid of getting slash dotted, right? Well, I guess that shows my age. I'm afraid of getting reddited, right? That's a little bit better. Or Hacker News. So that's it. That's all the propaganda. No more propaganda. From here on out, we're all just doing code. Okay? Any questions on the propaganda? No? You're like, thank goodness. All right. Some of this propaganda, though, you kind of needed. All right, just to say, just a little bit of my defense, like you kind of needed this to kind of understand what you're getting out of the box. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. All right, ready? So who has not signed up for an account yet? You probably haven't, and you haven't, and you haven't, and you haven't. Go to openshift.com. Right, and there's a sign up button up here on the top. And if we're here where it says have a promo code to enter, you can put in Europython WK.
Sorry, how I get to that web page?
You get to this web page. Oopsie. No, that's not what I wanted. You get to this web page up here. Sign up.
Does it matter if I missed the...
No, it does not matter if you missed the promo code. You can send me an email at the SPOUSTY at redhat.com and say, I missed my promo code. And that's all. You send it from the same email that you signed up with, and then I can give you that code. Openshift.com. .com. Do you want to sit next to him? Do you you want to sit next to him? No, it's okay. S. That's the code? Oh, you're just signing up. Sorry. I thought you were saying I had already signed up. And actually, let me do this while we're doing that. Okay. So then the next thing we're going to do, and this is where I make Merrick stop checking his email, is we're going to all install. Is the network working now?
No.
The wireless is still working? Good. Okay, so what we're all going to do now is install the command line tools. We have a web interface and we have the Eclipse interface, but I think the command line tools are much better to use, especially as developers. So, let's see. There is one, how many Windows users are there in the room? 1, 2. Okay, Merrick, 3, your Windows 2. These are the 3 we need to help the most. Everybody else, it's just because they don't have Ruby out of the box, right? Like all you hipster Mac people have Ruby out of the box, right, with Ruby gems. If you're using Linux, you may not have Ruby gems. You may have Ruby, but not Ruby gems. We need Ruby gems, and you need Git, and you need SSH. All the non-Windows people have SSH. Make sure you have Git, and then make sure you have Ruby gems. And if you do, you can do sudo gem install RHC. Okay? So for the Windows people, back on the Red Hat site, on the Openshift site, there's a they killed my web page. All right. So it's openshift.com/get-started. And we're going to click on the command line. And for Windows people, it gives you the 2 things you need to download. You're going to have to download Ruby installer if you don't already have Ruby on your machine. It's get-started. Actually, if one Windows person does that, we can put it on a USB stick and pass it around to the other people. You can download it. And the other thing you'll need is Git for Windows. Is anybody using RVM? Is anybody touching that horrid language that I absolutely hate called Ruby? No, you are? Okay, Merrick is your friend. The reason I use the hate thing is when Merrick describes Python, now I've got you trapped in a room with a bunch of Python developers. He says yeah, because you're big and strong.
I don't mind the people, I just mind the language.
There you go. He's not a fan of Python. He thinks it's a perfectly fine language, and he just chooses not to use it for himself. I should have muted that one, so not all the you're not going to get all the hate mail. Here, I'll actually also download. Yeah, exactly. Because it's being used. Sometimes, Stephen. I'm going to download the Ruby installer. Is everybody else okay with the sudo gem install RHC? Is it working? More or less? What's the... It's just taking a long time?
Conflicting messages and failure and error, but it says it installed, so it seems to be okay.
You know what? If it does that, sometimes a good thing to do is to run it one more time.
I'm doing that right now.
Okay, good. Yes, don't do that yet. You can if it's not going to be the end of the world if you did. You just get in trouble with the teacher for jumping ahead when you weren't supposed to. From when are you downloading it right now? You got it? You got both of them? Okay. Go ahead. Sorry, say that again. Do you have the Git installer too? I mean the SSH? Okay, I'll get them. You can go ahead and keep going. I'm downloading them now anyway. There's only one other Windows person I think that's not being helped. Hey, Windows guy in the back row. Are the downloads working for you or you already got them? Okay. So the important thing for you three, well, Merrick will work with him, for you two guys, is to make sure there's 2 checkboxes you really, really have to get, or 3. For Ruby, you need to make sure Ruby is in your path, okay? And then for Git, you need to do Git in your path, and then on, I think it's like the last screen, there's a third checkbox or a third radio button that says replace all the executables with my executables. Say yes to that. When you install Git on the... Okay, do you have OpenSSH on your machine, or is it Putty?
I have
OpenSSH? Okay, good. Then if that works from the command, open your command prompt and type SSH. That's the important. Yeah, Putty or Putty, depending on which part of Europe you're from, is a problem because they don't use standard OpenSSH keys, and all of our stuff is based off of keys. We do not use passwords with SSH at all. I think so. So it's available in your command prompt. I mean, you don't have to, but then we have to figure out how to make Putty. Have you ever done an OpenSSH key and turned it into a Putty key? Have you ever done that before? Is it Putty Gen? Yeah. Have you done that before? Okay, then that's good. So you've already made an OpenSSH key for your Putty key? Okay, you can be a guinea pig. Do you know what a guinea pig is? If it doesn't work, start downloading OpenSSH right now though anyway. Once you've done the Ruby stuff and installed it, go ahead and you've got Git and SSH installed, do the same thing except without sudo. Gem install RHC. So,
which package do I miss? Ruby something?
Do you have Ruby?
Yes, but you mentioned
Ruby gems? Do you know if you have Ruby gems? Type gem and see what happens.
yes.
So you have gem installed. So you can do sudo gem install RHC. Let me squeeze by. If you use RVM, no, but which is like virtual end. But do you use RVM? No, then do sudo. What's going on?
Well, I think I'm pretty much done. I've not checked.
Did you do gem install RHC?
No.
Okay, so that's all.
That's all right. So I've got Ruby and what's the next step?
Gem. Do you have Git?
Yes.
So yeah. So then just do gem. GEM. Yeah, good. Gem install RHC. Yes.
Because when I go to the OpenSSH,
Yeah.
it actually recommends me.
You use Putty? Yeah.
I'm not really sure how to install
The OpenSSH by itself.
I was actually looking for that also before.
So the other thing is, here, how do I turn mute on? The video doesn't need to know about me talking to you about installing. Oh, just hold. Okay, so I'm assuming now everybody has everything installed.
This is like installed by
Okay, try one more time. Do the same command again. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go back to my water because my mouth is very dry. Excuse me. All right. So I'm assuming everybody's got everything installed. A few minutes.
Okay, 1 minute. 1 minute.
You got 1 minute. I'm going to take that time to eat some peach. Did everybody else eat breakfast? Who didn't eat breakfast yet? You didn't? Do you want a peach or some cheese or an egg? It's the most important meal of the day. I'm afraid you're going to pass out you won't learn as well in my class now. I've got some protein, that would be good. No? All right. How about some tea? Did you get tea or coffee? Nothing. Ooh. Are you German? Check. That explains. A beer? You want a beer now? I only say that because I'm friends with Merrick. Did you do sudo gem install RHC?
No.
All right. Because you're on Linux, right?
Yes.
That. Yeah. Oh, Windows Phone. It's what?
How do I get it to use an existing domain? Because I ran the RHC setup and they asked me to choose a domain, so I gave one I already had, and so it's complaining no longer exists.
Yeah. Pick a new one.
I have to.
Yes. Because it already exists. Someone already has it. I'll explain.
How do I tell it to use?
What do you mean it's your domain name? Like a DNS, like as in like the big,
Now the domain is the subdomain.
the namespace in our stuff.
Yeah.
You already have that. Yeah, you can't give that up. It's on another account. Is this a different account or the same account?
It's the same account.
Oh, then you don't need it. Then you already have it. Don't worry. Do RHC domain show if you really run it.
I mean, it hasn't been set on this machine, so
But it
the
shouldn't.
machine doesn't know about it.
So,
I mean, I've created a new account,
but it shouldn't be. Did you create a new account?
but no, I have one.
Did it bail out of the setup? When you said you bailed out of the setup probably.
Yeah, probably. I think I said none. Yeah, I said none at that point because it didn't accept.
Okay, it should have known that you already have a namespace though. When you did RHC setup in your account, it should have seen it.
How should it have known that?
Because when you did
my login.
your login, it should have gone and seen it.
Okay.
Go to the webpage and go to openshift.com and sign in, and let's just see what it thinks. I just want to see what it thinks. It should have seen that. We'll do the we're going to all do the RHC setup. Okay, your minute's up. Time to go. All right, everybody run RHC setup. So RHC is Red Hat, stands for Red Hat Cloud, right? And we need to do RHC setup. And
That's the arrow.
in the RDoc, don't worry about it. That one you don't have to worry about at all. Okay, so after you hit RHC setup, it's going to ask you for a username. And their username, no, we have to move forward now.
It's not like RC.
No, we got to keep going. We already gave you 1 minute. Now you sound like an Italian rather than the Czech.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, see? We had this whole big, I don't know, is that bad karma to do? The reason I keep making this joke is Merrick and I was trying to understand more of European culture. And Merrick said that Czechs are more like Germans and that trains run on time, everybody comes when they're supposed to come, and that Italians and the southern, like I have family in Israel, so I understand Mediterranean culture. You see I use my hands a lot. I grew up in New York. And for us, it's more like, I get there. When I get there, don't worry. I've got things I need to do. I don't want to mess with my artistic flow. So he already used it as the check. You don't get another minute. The train leaves in 1 minute, and the train left. Okay, good. See, my artistic flow helped out your check side. All right. So the first username that it's going to ask for is the username you used to sign up before for your account. The password is the same password you used, okay? Yeah, your email address. Then after that, what's the next thing it asks for? Should it store a token? And the answer is yes. You can say no if you want to, but basically all the command line tools, what they do is they send a REST request to our services. Right? Basically the command line tools are a nice wrapper around all the REST commands. And so it's all HTTP. And so what it's basically doing is putting a cookie on your machine so that you don't have to keep doing your username and password. If you don't do that, every time you do a command, you're going to have to do your username and password. The cookie lasts for 1 day. So say yes to that. Merrick, you should probably sit up here. Yes. And then the next question it asks is about, it's going to start doing SSH keys, right? And it says, should I upload? You have to let it upload your SSH key. Because everything we do, not the RHC commands, but everything else, happens over SSH with keys. Okay, and then the last thing that it really is going to ask you is about namespaces. Right, so what is a namespace? Every application in Openshift, when you create an application, you automatically get assigned a URL, and the URL will look like this. Right? So what you're doing is you're picking this name right here. And this has to be unique. It has to be unique within RH Cloud. Right? This part has to be unique within here. So my advice is pick something short because it's going to become part of all of your URLs. But make sure it's not like, if your name is, I don't know, Gunter, I'm sure someone has already taken Gunter. What's a good, Mario? Someone's probably already taken Mario. I'm sure I've already taken Microsoft and Amazon and like all those names, I'm squatting them. I'm going to charge them big bucks when they come to our cloud. But you have to pick something unique there, okay? That's what your namespace is representing. That means your network's not working. The LAN should be working. I would like everybody, now that the LAN is working, in case there's some rush in the other ones that they use all the Wi-Fi, it's better to be on the LAN. It'll probably be faster. Yeah? We're up to the area where we're choosing the namespace. See, I told you should sit there. Okay? Everybody got you're probably going to have to, Windows guy in the back, you're probably going to have to do it again.
No, I got it.
You got it? Okay. Everybody got that? No? What's the matter? What happened? Connection failed? Try it again. Okay. I think that was probably the network, your computer switching from the Wi-Fi to maybe the hard line. Off? And now, well, okay, we'll see. Let's see maybe. And then after namespace, did it work this time? Still the same problem? It shouldn't have that because it has to authenticate. Or is everybody running into the... It's working for most other people? Can you go to a website and see if your network connection is actually up? Okay. Your network's not working? It's doing all the blinkies. Is yours network working? Maybe you should go back to Wi-Fi. Because that at least works. Okay. And then I think after namespace, it doesn't ask anything. I think we're done after namespace, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So now you're all set. Okay. We're going to give it everybody else one more minute because they should go. No? Still no connection? Go to Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi doesn't work either? Well, no, because you still have the network plugged in. Unplug the network. I think the Mac will say, I've got a network card plugged in. I'm going to keep trying to use that until... The next time, tomorrow, like you'll see when I go to, because I haven't used mine in a while. Tomorrow, when I go to use it, it'll say, hey, do you want to, it says, I have to remake your token for you. So you have to authenticate tomorrow, and then you don't have to authenticate for the rest of the day. Did it work? Did you get your namespace this time? Mr. Openshift shirt? Did you get your namespace this time? You're going along again? If not, there's a way to manually change the file that we can do it. All right, let me actually, is it working now for you? It fine? No, don't touch the LAN. But it did the RHC setup work now? You're all set? Everybody's done? We're good? The train, everybody's on the same track, we're at the same station, except for you. But you've used it already before. Okay, so you're okay. But you've only done it from the web, you haven't done it from the... Okay, that's fine though. But that you already know, I'm not as concerned. I just need to know how much do I have to help you out of the deep end of the pool. That's what I'm doing. All right, so whatever... No, you guys stay on Wi-Fi. Just stay on Wi-Fi. Don't listen to the man in the yellow shirt. All right, pay no attention to the man in the yellow shirt. The what? Is not working? Yeah, but I think there's something wrong with their hub or something in the front. Network issues are done. We'll have someone maybe come help them, but they're working on wireless right now, so we're just going to leave it like that. Okay, so if the wireless is working, let's not worry about it. Let's not worry about network anymore. Okay, ready? So at the end of the command line, when we create our first application, it's going to do a git clone, which means it's going to take code from your gear and bring it down to your local machine. So I need everybody to, unless you want to put your code in your base directory, I suggest you make a directory where you want your code to end up. So for me, I have a directory. Can you see that in the back? Yeah? Okay. I have a directory called git demo. Right? And this is where I know right? So these are all ones that I know I can delete without worrying about it. You can make the directory whatever you want to call it. Actually, I can do this now. There. And then I also want to, let me just check one thing for myself, please. You don't have to do this, but you can pay attention if you want to see where we write. This is what setup basically does on your machine. It uploads your key, and then it also makes this little file in your root directory called express.conf, and that holds like your login information, whether you should use an authorization token. So if you ever notice, I have a bunch of different accounts, and so I can change between accounts. I just want to make sure. See, I'm not using the account I wanted to use. So I'm going to edit that file. And I want to use that one. Okay. All right, everybody ready? So this is what we're going to, RHC means we're using the Red Hat command line tools. App, so we're doing something about an application. Create, we're creating an application. I want everyone to call theirs Python WS for today, standing for Python Web Service. Okay? In the future, you can call your application whatever you want. This is where you would put it. But for today, I want you to call it Python WS so everybody has the same, we can all stay together. And then Python -2.6. Okay? You can, but 2.7 is a community cartridge, and the community cartridge doesn't use mod WSGI with Apache. it's using G event. And so you're on your own if you use 2.7. Just use 2.6 for today. Use 2.7 in the future. And then the other thing is in another month, everybody will be using 2.7 and 3.3. Well, I don't think mod WSGI supports Python 3 yet. I don't know what we're going to do for that. But it'll be more standardized and it won't be a community cartridge anymore. Yeah?
In my machine, I have 2.7.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You don't have to, but what's going to happen is at the end of this command, it's going to do a git clone of Python WS, and so you'll end up with a source code directory on your local machine called Python WS. So either CD into a folder that you want the source code to end up in, or don't worry about it. No, this has nothing to do with the keys. This is all just about maintenance. This is all just about not littering your root directory with all of your applications. That's all. Okay? And then just hit enter. Most of you probably already hit enter because you skipped ahead. And see, so remember you were saying what happens when your key, that's what happens. Because it was a new feature and we didn't know what people wanted. Some people, like, if I got your key somehow, I can do anything I want on your... It's a security reason, but I told them, because I'm a developer, I don't care. I would like a month for my key, right? The other thing though, so this is how easy it is to get rid of an application. That's right, it should be stuck on it. But it's not really stuck. There's just a bunch of stuff happening on the server. What's happening, the rest of you, everyone except for me, should be seeing something like this, and then it should stay, it should be like right there, right? Yeah? So what it's doing right now is, what it's doing right now on the server is, do you want to know, how many of you know, well, most of you Linux or Mac people? Yeah? And I see a lot of Linux laptops. So what it's actually doing on the server is it made a request that says I need a new application. It's then going off to one of the nodes. We call them nodes. It's our big cluster of Red Hat Linux machines running in Amazon. And what it's doing is it's creating a unique user ID for your application. Then with that user, it's taking SC Linux and saying this user has these execute permissions, doesn't have these execute permissions, anything they run runs in this context. That's done. So it's finished now. As soon as you see this part done, when it's waiting for this line, it's actually now propagating the DNS name. Right? So it sets, that's done. Does everybody see that?
No, I've run into some error when loading. Should I just retry?
That makes me concerned about your SSH key. What is, Merrick?
Yes.
Can you help with this?
I can. I'm just trying to figure out their application in order to
Okay. So what actually happened is we did a whole bunch of SC Linux stuff, then we did use C groups to lock down resources. So that user gets 512 megs of RAM and that user gets 30% of the CPU, right? So we do that through the kernel. And then what we do is we make a Git repo in their file space, and then we propagate the DNS entry. So we actually publish that DNS entry live to the world. As long as the DNS is propagated to your phone, you can look at your app now. Right? So if I click on this URL up here, go ahead and click on your URL or copy and paste it, your app is up and live. And it should look like this. You are now all certified cloud deployers. Exactly. Add that to your resume. Is that what everybody's seeing? Yeah? So, sorry? It's still thinking about it? Because it knows you're using Windows. I don't, exactly. Exactly. I don't know why it's still, let's wait a little bit. It may actually be done and then you may have to do a git clone manually afterwards. Yeah, so it is. So what I'd like you to do is do this command. because if you don't do just a normal git clone, let's do it here. I would like you to do rhc git dash clone python ws.
Oh, basically it is that all these are running on the shared server. So basically, because it's where did you run the
Yeah, so basically what happens is let's say for some reason we all ended up on the same node. So let's say there's 30 people in this room. There are now 30 new instances of Apache HTTPD running on that machine, each locked to each particular user. Right? So if you write something, and your resources are constrained by SE Linux and C groups. So let's say you write some bad Python code, not that you ever would, but you might, and it wants to peg the CPU. To you, it'll look like you've pegged the CPU. To everybody else, it looks like somebody's pegged 30% of the CPU. Or you're consuming memory, you keep consuming memory, you keep consuming memory. You'll consume your 512 megs of RAM, and then your application will die because you've consumed all the memory on the machine. Everybody else won't see anything because it's only your memory. If you kill Apache for some reason, it's only your instance which dies, nobody else's instance dies. So it's true multi-tenant and shared nothing. Nothing is shared between users. Okay, yeah. Right, so the question was, I forget that we're on the video. The question was there's no VMs involved, and that's absolutely correct. There's no VMs at all. We're not spinning up any VMs. So one of the nice parts is it's very lightweight in terms of resources. The other nice part about this is for us, or for if your sysadmins install this internally, let's say there was some bug in Python and they needed to update Python. All they need to do is just change the one Python binary on the big machine, kick all the Python apps, and when they restart, they'll all restart with the new binary. Right? They don't have to go into each individual VM and patch each Python VM.
Is there full isolation?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. The question is there definitely isolation? Yeah, there's isolation on all levels. Any other questions? Okay, did that RHC git clone work?
I know the problem is when I installed my Git client, I used this RHC instead of
Ah. So your SSH part is, you won't get the key. You're having problems with the keys. Okay, I'll help you when we get farther on. You know what the command is though. All right, so are you all ready to become certified cloud developers now? Right, so one of the, I feel like we should be drinking beers and there should be a disco ball going with all the hand raising. One other thing about this that I just want to point out before we become the developers is the other nice thing is no one's crowding around your laptop to see your application, right? You have a public URL from the very beginning. So you can say, hey, like how many of you do consulting work? Only one. Do you know what I don't know what's the word in Italian for consulting work? Consultinino. Consulente. Yeah, have you seen that Family Guy episode where he's got the mustache? Yeah, that's me. So when you do consulting work, you can start making a prototype for using the online product right away. Right? It's not, here, I'm going to send you some Photoshop screenshots. What do you think of those? It's like, no, I've got a prototype of the app up. How do you like it? Right? Or even internally in your big company, you actually have an app that people can see, which is also a better way to get a server out of sysadmins, is if you show them working code rather than saying, I have this great idea, please give me a server. Right? So, all right, let's all do a code change. Okay, so what you'll see on your machine now, right, is you should see a directory called Python WS, because that's the git clone. You should cd into that, and you do an ls-a or whatever, I don't know what the command is in dir. I think dir will show the hidden files on Windows. You'll see there's a .git. This is a git repository, right? What we're going to do right now is cd to WSGI. And that file, application, is the file that we were all just looking at. Right? So what we're going to do is you're going to use your favorite text editor, whatever that might be. You could use gedit, you could use Sublime, whatever. You just want to open that file. I am going to stay out of the religious wars, and I'm going to use Nano. Okay, so there's that file. And you can see it's basically a Python file that wraps an HTML file. Right? It's basically just a big, long HTML file. I want everyone to go to the h1 tag and change that to something they want to change it to. And mine's going to be Beppo the Boopy. I speak the Italiano. There we go. Because I'm not even speaking. That's Italiano. Okay. Save your change. And then what you're going to do is git commit, right? So we need to commit the change to our local machine. The file is here, so it's in Python WS SWSGI, and then it's called application. The H1, the contents inside the H1 tag. So I think before what it said was.
Sorry, which change I have to do with?
You don't have to do. You can change anything you want, but it's nice if you change. There's an H1 that says welcome to Openshift. Right? That's actually, if I go back to the web page. That's this banner up here, right? We're changing that banner. Okay? You can change anything you want. I don't care what you change, but if you change the H1 tag, then you're actually changing this banner up here. You can delete the image if you want. You can change the place your application here. I'm just do some sort of change to the HTML so that you can see it. Okay? Then you do the git commit. After you've done your change, back at the command line, do a git commit, and that commits your change to your local repository on your laptop. And you should see something. Okay? Then once you've done a git commit, you do a git push. And what push says is take my local changes and push them up to the server. So there the push is done. And now what we're doing is, you'll see in a second. There, now you're watching Openshift pick up the git push. We have hooks written against the git push, and we're doing the build. All right? Just find some HTML and change it. Anything you want. And so what you get there, it's done. And so once you get to this done, the master to master, at the bin done, it's all done. You can go back to your page and reload it.
What is the thing for the git push?
Git push.
Just git push?
Yep, that's it. Anything you want. Anything. Pick anything. Feel your spirit free to change whatever you want on the HTML page. Change some text. Delete a word. Anything you want. So that's, from then on, that is the development process. Right? The only time you're using our command line tools is when you're doing some infrastructure-like thing. You're making a server, you're adding some new functionality to a server. That's the only time you use the RHC tools. After that, everything else is Git and SSH. Right? So if you like VI or Emacs and command line Git, great. For you Eclipse developers, even if you don't want to use our tools, you can take it. You'll notice when I created the app before, right? If we go way back up, when I created the app, it gives you a Git URL. As long as whatever IDE you're using understands Git, you can use this to clone your project, and then within your IDE, you just do a git push, commit and push, and it will deploy your code. Right? There's nothing proprietary about how you do your development. There's no special libraries, there's no special building process, it's just a git push. Okay? Yeah?
Only the branch master, right? If you can create another different branch, it's fine.
I always get this question, and I got the answer for once, and I understood it, and then I forgot it. So, Merrick, do you know if we can push branches other than master and have it build off of other than master?
So you have to push into the master in Openshift. So you can do git push, name of your local branch, two dots, it's
Colon.
master, and this way you push this local branch to master branch in Openshift.
Right, so what Merrick is saying, you could do git push
OpenShift,
broken to master.
exactly. Yeah. And there's the name of the
Broken is the name of your local branch, and master is master up on OpenShift, yeah?
and origin or OpenShift or whatever is the name of the remote is after push.
After push?
OpenShift and then it's
Yeah, what do we don't call ours OpenShift. I think we just call it origin, yeah? Git push to the origin, the branch, and push it to master, so you can keep doing a dev branch. So you can, we give you 3 gears. So one of your applications could be your test gear or your QE, and you keep pushing whatever branch you're developing off of, and then then you can do that same application. You can do another remote host, and instead of origin, it could be called, instead of naming this origin, you could name this QE, and then when you have an production OpenShift instance, you could call it production, and you can push master to master once you merge back in if you wanted. Okay. Any other questions? So you're now all, by the way, you're now all certified cloud developers.
maybe like tiny details. This it shuts down the Apache.
Yes, you don't have to have it do that. But what was your question? So that means your SSH key is not set up properly. Okay, but you're not using Putty. So you can go to the question, he's getting permission denied issues with when he does his git push, and since we use SSH, that probably means there's a problem with SSH. I would take your public key, copy the contents of it, go to the web console, and then in the web console there's a my profile or something, and then there's a place where you can paste in a new SSH key. So that's also how you would do collaborative development, right? So the main author of the application is the only one who can add infrastructure, but everybody else, you can just add their public SSH key to the application, and then they can do git pushes and SSH into the machine, just like everybody else, okay? Then the other question was a small something or other.
Yeah, can you like do if you want
I'll repeat it.
like if you don't want downtime.
Right, you don't want downtime because we're shut down the server, right? By default, we shut down the server and then do the build and everything. So the other thing you'll notice inside of your directory, everybody can do this with me. Go back up one directory to the root of your Git repo, right? So it should be Python WS. And if you do an ls-a or a dir, you'll see there's a .openshift directory, right? And in that OpenShift directory, we put a whole bunch of fun little things. Little presents for you. So if you go into that, you'll see there's action hooks, cron, and markers. Is everybody in that directory now? Or you can just follow along with me if you want. Action hooks is, you saw how we did that. We kicked off our build off the git push. If you go into action hooks, We also give you places where you can kick off processes, either when we shut down the server, when we start the build, when the build is done. When we give you a whole bunch of places where you can write any code you want that gets executed as part of the build process or the starting and stopping process. Like, let's say you have a directory you want cleaned every time the server is restarted. You could put that into one of the action hooks and it'll happen. Right? You can also use that to set environment variables. Right? Like you can use, say, set path equals, and then you can add more to the path there. Cron, we give you cron out of the box. There's a cartridge for it, which adds functionality. But once you install that cartridge, if we go into cron, you'll see that you have daily, hourly, minutely, monthly, and weekly. Right? So you can drop any cron job in there that you want. One of the other advantages that we have, because we don't have VMs, and because you are all on a shared machine, is this was a Python application, right? We said we wanted Python. But suppose you like writing, for some strange reason, you like writing your systems administration scripts in Perl, right? Because this is all one big shared machine, any language that's installed on the machine you have access to. Or you like writing it in Java. Or you like writing it in any Ruby. All those are installed on the Linux machine and you have access to them. By saying that our application is Python, all that means is Python is the web language. So I want you to, when we start the app, use mod WSGI. But all the other languages are still available to you, and you can still run them. Right? Usually these are just written in Bash, but you can write them, if you wanted to, in Python. You can write them in any language you want them to execute in. Any questions? Yeah, okay, I'm getting there. That's coming. I wasn't going to withhold markers from you. All in due time. Okay, so in markers, there's nothing right now, right? But, sorry? Okay. Yes, there's a git keep because we don't want git to get rid of the directory. It's an important directory for git. But what you can put in here, what we could put in here, which I'm not going to do today because we're going to be adding other things, but as soon as we add them, then we can put it in there. If I do this, right? So if I create a file called hot deploy, that's a key to the build server that says don't shut down the server, just build and deploy, right? So the same thing on Java. Like with the Java servers, that will say, don't shut down the application server, just build the WAR file and deploy it. So later, after we've added Mongo and done a git merge, we'll all touch hot deploy, and then we won't shut down the server anymore. Okay? But that's how you would do it. So that's the long answer to your question about how do I stop the server from stopping. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
It's quite clear the deployment control is tied with the developer activity.
Yes.
What in enterprise scenario, when probably you want to code this, you want to separate the developer role from the
deployer role. So I think what the scenario that I've heard used most often is, so the question was, how do you decouple the developer role from the sysadmin deployer role, right? Like in a lot of companies, the sysadmins are like, you are not deploying any code directly to my machines. You will give me the code and I will deploy it for you, right? Something like that. So because we use Git, you can delete the Git directory and give them the code and they can deploy it, right? Does that make sense? Like that doesn't change from what you probably already have. Is that right? Yeah. The other thing is if you're using Openshift throughout the entire company, then what you can do is you could just still say developers don't have access to the production instances of Openshift. The developers get QE and development instances of Openshift. Like I've got this cluster of machines for developers and QE, and this cluster of machines is production, and they can give me the Git repository and I'll push it up over there, but they're not going to get the ability to push directly there. You can say developers don't get accounts on the production machines. It's the same kind of idea. Nothing's really changed that way. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? We're good? Okay, so 15 minutes? So how far have we got? And after the coffee break, how much time do we have? Is the coffee break in the middle? Yeah. No, it's okay. I don't want to keep people from their coffee. So we have 15 minutes left. All right, let me see what I've got next. We all did this. We can do one more thing, and then I'm going to switch to Mongo. All right. What I would like is everybody still inside of their Git repository? All right, so you're going to do this, RHC SSH. RHC SSH. You can use the SSH command default if you want, but because you set up these applications with our command line tools, we put a little bit of metadata in the Git repository so that you can do RHC SSH and you're now all SSH'd into your gear. Right?
What is gear exactly?
What?
What does gear mean?
Gear is like a server. Gear is your application, you can think of. It's what you use to host your cartridges. Cartridges are how you add functionality. So like Python's a cartridge, Mongo's a cartridge. I should have put the terminology slide in there. Sorry about that. All right. Is everybody SSH'd in? Does everybody understand what the gear is now? You can think of it like a server. It's not exactly a server. It's kind of your container to run stuff in. And then cartridges is what you run. Like you add functionality using a cartridge. Okay? We're SSH'd in. All right. So what's the first thing everybody does when they SSH in? LS. Right? That's kind of boring. Okay, what are most sysadmins afraid you're going to do? Oops, I just did the wrong thing. What are most sysadmins afraid you're going to do as the first thing?
Sudo rf-rf.
Yeah. So, or they're going to say sudo su, right? Where you're just going to. Most developers want to do this. And it says permission denied, right? That's SC Linux, right? We're not allowing you to do that stuff. But we do allow you, so what we don't allow you to do as a developer is all the things sysadmins don't want you to do, right? We try to prevent you from doing things that will mess up the entire machine because everybody's sharing that entire machine. Okay, but why are you probably SSHing into your machine? What do you usually SSH into your Linux instances for? Change some settings, or things have gone wrong and you're looking at your log files. Right? I need to see my log files. So if you do ls, you'll see there's a Python directory. You can cd to Python. And in here is all the stuff for our server and how we're running Python. If you go to logs, right? So if I put the working directory, it's Python logs. And if you do an ls in here, you can see there's your log files. And you have full permissions on these log files. You can edit them, you can delete them, you can grep them, you can do whatever you want to the log files. Okay? What's another thing you usually, so you notice the application's really slow. It's not erroring out, but it's really slow. What's the next thing you're going to want to run? Top. So you can run top. Right? There's top. What processes are you seeing? Only yours. Nobody else, you cannot see anybody else's processes. Okay? So that's SC Linux again. Just a note though, this load up here is the load for the entire server. Okay? We don't actually have a way right now, because top doesn't understand C groups, to show the load that's just your piece. Right? This percentage is the percentage CPU of the entire server. We're working with the top team, because Red Hat has some of the people who contribute to top and who do C groups. So we're working with them to get better metrics, so that we can alias top to be a top that understands what are my processes consuming. Okay? So that's it. PS, same thing. You do PS, you only get your processes.
This goes to one server, like at the moment I have 3
Yes, this is because you SSH, gears are usually tied to an application, right? So this is just that one application, this one gear for that one application.
Aha, okay. So you are not really not running like one application on many years.
You can if you want to. So when we started the app before, it would have been, here, let me go back to this one to show you. Let's see, where did I put it? Did I put it up here? Yeah, no, I didn't. Okay, you instead of doing, before when I did this, RHC app, create, my app, Python -2.6, that says I want everything, it's called an embedded application. So when we add Mongo, it's going to put Mongo onto the same gear. If I wanted Mongo to be on a separate gear and Python to be on a separate gear and then Python to be able to scale up to do more, then I would have just done this. And that says -S says it's a scalable app. All right? But then if you do that, and that also adds HA proxy, which is our load balancer. If you do that, then you consume 2 gears if you add Mongo, right? Because it's going to say, oh, Mongo needs to go on its own gear, Python needs to go on its own gear. Which is, I actually like, because then Mongo gets all 512 megs of RAM and isn't competing for CPU with the Apache part. Okay? We also have different gear sizes, so you could also say -G medium, right? That's the medium gears have 1 gig of RAM rather than 512. Those are mostly for Java users or for your database. The other thing we could do here, if we had a Git repo that we knew already worked in Openshift, we could say -- from code, and then we could do HTTP, and then put in the URL for the Git repo. And rather than that dumb little template application that we all edited, it would actually, as part of the gear creation, it would do a Git clone from that repo and make that your template. Okay? It's another option, just so you know. All right. I think, two other things about this. If you do env and then pipe that to grep, Openshift, you can see all the environment variables we give you. And so why am I bringing up environment variables? Did everybody see the command to do that? It was env, here. Boop. Env, and then I grepped Openshift. So as developers, you know how much, what do people tell you about hard coding IP addresses and hard coding passwords in your code? They say it's a bad idea, right? In the cloud environment, hard coding them will break your applications. It's not just a bad idea, things break. So this will be good practice for you to like beat you out of that habit of doing it. Because one of the things you'll notice is like the user ID, if let's say this node that we're located on now starts to get a lot of traffic and we need to load balance. And so we're going to migrate your application to a different node. The UUID should stay the same, but where's the IP address? The IP address for that node will most definitely change. And when we use Mongo later, the IP address for your Mongo instance will change as well. So if you hard code the IP address in for your Mongo instance, it will break when we migrate it. Or if your app gets, if you spin down if our apps get spun down, it may get spun up somewhere else, and the IP address could change as well. So in your code, always use the environment variables, right? Like if you're asking for one of the other things is the data directory, right? This data directory is actually permanent disk space for you, for your application, right? We have ephemeral disk space with disk space that comes and goes, but anything you put into your data directory will stay in between your app getting stopped and restarted. So use the Openshift data directory environment variable in your code. Don't put in the path to the data directory. Okay? So that's the environment variable stuff. You have a temp directory, and this behaves like everybody else's temp directories, except what's the usual thing that happens in temp? What's the permissions for everybody's files in TMP? Read, write, execute everybody, right? What we actually do here is we use PAM namespaces. so that you get your own temp directory. No one else can see it, no one else can use it. It's just your own temp directory, but it is read, write, execute for you by default, and we make no guarantees that the files will stay around there. If you ever wanted to mess with your bash profile on the machine, you can cd to the Openshift data directory. And if you do an ls-a in there, or an ls-a, you can see there's your bash history and your bash profile. All right, so that's your permanent data directory. That's where we store your bash history and your bash profile. Anything you put in there counts against your 1 gig, and anything in your temp directory, anything in your Git repository, those all count against your 1 gigabyte of data space. Okay, big drawback for our architecture at this point in time, just so you don't think I'm just telling you everything is great and rosy in Openshift. I would say one of the biggest drawbacks right now that we have, that we're actively working on is, remember I was saying we can scale up and make more gears? This data directory is not shared between gears. Okay? So this is gear local. It stays only with the gear. It's permanent and it stays with the gear, but it's not going to get synced up across all gears when they get spun up. So if there's something you need available to all gears, store it in your database for now. Use S3, use some other space to store those files. So like if you're doing something where people upload movies or images, store those in S3, store those in the database. Don't store them in this local directory unless you're never going to scale. Like if you make an embedded app, it doesn't matter because that doesn't scale. And so this data directory is all you get. But if you're doing something else, put those files somewhere else, okay? Or you're going to have to write some sort of rsync code, but I don't even know if that, you'd have to write like a minutely cron to rsync between all the gears, which, like, ask for all the gears, or try it if you want. I'm not guaranteeing it's a good solution though. All right, how much time do we have left? Time? 3 minutes. Okay, so I think that's a good, well, we're just going to stop early. I expect you back 3 minutes early. No, just kidding. We're going to take a break now. We'll be back in 45 minutes. And when we come back, with the 3 minutes, I'll tell you what we're doing. When we come back, we're going to do a little bit about Mongo. Then we're going to do some spatial stuff. You're going to learn a little bit about using Mongo for spatial functionality, like mapping. And then we're going to merge in some some stuff from GitHub and make it all work. Okay? I have a Flask repository. I have a Flask application that makes a web service off the top of a Mongo database that does some spatial queries. And so we'll put it all in. Okay? All right, everybody. See you in 45 minutes.